into the trending stories that are shaping the country that we live in. But we'll begin with this. Now, artificial intelligence is rapidly changing how we work, how we learn, and how we communicate. And now it's beginning to shape how many parents support their children's education and daily activities. While some see AI as a useful tool for learning and creativity, others worry about the screen time, over dependence on technology, and its impact on social development. Joining us via Zoom for this conversation is semantic AI expert and the founder and CEO of TrainDTrainer, Dr. Onyekachi Onwudike-Jumbo. Good morning, Dr. Onyekachi. How are you doing this morning? Are you with me?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here. This is a very important discussion that we are having. In recent times, we have seen several countries, put a ban on telephone usage and try to curb AI ethically to protect children. How do you think this is playing out in Nigeria? Do you think that we currently have the data laws, data policy, and governance that makes AI ethical and safe for Nigerian children?
Well, I think we still have some grounds to cover. And I need to say this, that the most influential presence helping to raise many African children today is someone their parents have never met. And so you find out that in many homes, they don't even know that that presence exists. And that's what we call AI. So there's a lot that is happening now that the government has not yet caught up with. We see some of the things, laws being changed here in the UK, for instance. Children below 16 are not allowed to use mobile devices and have access to social media. So I think that we need to start asking more serious questions, and we need to know how this will change parenting, because it's not a question of if it will, it already has. And we need to ask ourselves, who is raising the African child, even in the homes?
Very, very profound.
Yes, and I like what you just said. Who is raising the African child? Because Africa is a society that is loaded with so much tradition. There are things children shouldn't know. There are things children should know, and so on. Technology has actually overtaken us in a lot of ways, and so on. Now, talking about children below 16 not having mobile devices and so on and so forth, question I will ask is, how do we ensure that that works? Right now in Nigeria, it's a little bit difficult because I've seen 10-year-olds with very big phones, that have access to the internet. And the internet is one place that I think is very insecure for children. What is your take on that?
So I think the most important thing that we need to establish today is that every child now has an invisible co-parent, and devices are now one of those co-parents. Children are no longer being raised by only their parents or communities. We used to say something, it takes a village to raise a child. Now they are being shaped by algorithms. They are being shown recommendation systems. You can leave your child to watch, let me say, Teletubbies, and before you know what is happening, the child has moved over to something else, because these recommendation systems are pushing things to these children. So if you look at it, the digital environment is shaped in such a way to capture attention, not to form character. And if parents don't understand that it's not AI versus parenting, it's now AI-enabled parenting, then we're going to lose a whole generation of children. So it's time for us to start thinking about how much time our children spend on these devices. What influences do they notice? How do they think? How do these things shape their thinking? How does it shape their belief? Because nobody has invited, parents into this AI parenting relationship, but it's already there. And I think we need to take real measures to stop this. It's not about carrying the latest device. Is your child emotionally, sustainably equipped to handle what comes? And this is not about, I'm not talking about the dark web and things like that, or the deep web. I'm just saying, is your child emotionally equipped to handle that device? And this brings another important question. How are parents even sensitizing themselves on the use of these things?
And I think that's the exact question I would like to ask you, because back in the day, our traditional leaders used to be the custodian of our, culture, tradition, etc. Now, some of them are already AI-ifying, so to speak, their manner of, governance. That's on one hand. On the other hand is the fact that we've seen AI, how it has negatively affect the lives of children. For instance, children, someone, talking to AI because he or she was depressed. I think he was depressed, and then the AI advised the person to commit suicide. That story was out there from the West. But how do you think African parents can protect indigenous languages, for instance, moral values and communal identities, such as that of Ubuntu in South Africa or the Omoluabi ethos in the southwestern part of this country, when dominant AI often promotes Eurocentric or Western perspectives?
Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting question. The thing about it is we must not lose our context as Africans. That's something I continue to champion. No matter what, technology or device a child is being exposed to, these children are being shaped by assumptions and priorities and training data, chosen by someone else. And so you mentioned something about a child being asking questions using an AI, maybe ChatGPT, for instance, and saying, this is how I'm feeling. And indirectly, what is happening is that children are beginning to form opinions, tastes, and even identity through systems that nobody in our country or even in our continent has had a hand in designing. And that is very worrying. So whether a child is in Lagos or in Nairobi or in Kigali, any part of the world, the technology may be similar, but the questions shaping that child's identity are not. And I think it's important that parents continue to reinforce this. You can ask AI the questions, but I know you. And you can never take away the humanness from AI. From parenting, for instance, you can't take away the humanness. And I think it's important that we emphasize that. So if you see something, parents were the primary architects of a child's worldview before. And today, they still lay the foundation. But what is happening is that the algorithms are increasingly designing the rooms children spend their mental lives in. So it's important that we go back to what we used to do. Ubuntu, I am because you are, and things like that. And that should also influence how we parent.
Now, doctor, I have a 12-year-old younger sister. Don't ask about the age gap. It's interesting dynamics. But she often uses AI to, do her homework, to get work done, to learn new things. Like you said, and it was very profound. You said we have an invisible parent who we have no idea about, essentially raising the next generation. And my question is this, and I'll just back it up with some data. Studies have shown that children lose their cognitive abilities to grow and to create new neural pathways when they are constantly relying on AI to think for them, essentially. How can Nigerian parents make sure that they are able to supplement their children's use of AI with real-life, real-world experiences without denying them the access to using AI to learn?
That's a very interesting question. I'll answer it in several ways. I think the crisis we have on our hands isn't information. The crisis we have is meaning. And one of the things that I studied in my, doing my doctoral research was really establishing how machines process information. So children are thrown all this data and information, but how do they represent meaning? Meaning and information are not the same thing. So yes, artificial intelligence can give you information, it can explain honesty, but it cannot show a child why honesty matters. After maybe a parent tells the child the truth of what it costs them, to lose something. It can define courage, but it cannot become the memory that teaches courage. So it is important that parents and, key stakeholders now begin to, embrace what I call formation. Formation is not teaching a child what to think, say use AI and get this answer. Formation is teaching a child how to become and who to become. And I think there's a definition of parenting that we need to recover from as a people. Parenting is not simply preparing children to succeed in the world they would inherit. It is preparing them to shape the world they inherit. And we must go back to our traditional things. If we know how rich we are as a people, use AI, but make sure it is contextually relevant.
Absolutely.
Make sure our stories are embedded as well.
Yeah, so very quickly, we're talking about AI and parenting. What about the role? Because parenting is on one hand where you see the children having a part of their life being spent with their parents, and then the other part of their life, especially their days, with their teachers. what role do you think teachers can also play here? Because when we say, yeah, that gap that is left between the parent and the children, but the teacher comes in, how should the teacher also, what's her role in this mix?
Okay, I strongly believe that, teachers and parents, key stakeholders in bringing up any child, and a child will spend a lot of time in school. So this is a case where we have to have a good relationship between parents and children and teachers. And now I think the first thing for parents is to stop asking questions like, what is my child learning? I think we should begin to start asking questions like, who decides what is what teaching in the first place? Now, any parent or teacher who is afraid of AI will lose out. And it is important that parents and teachers work hand in hand. They understand who owns the algorithm, who owns these are more complex conversations. No one, whether teachers or parents, should be afraid of AI. They should see it as a tool, because we must move from being consumers of AI to becoming people that shape the intelligence that would influence our children. So whoever builds this intelligence influences the civilization, and parents and teachers must work hand in hand, including schools, to do this as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onwudike-Jumbo, for joining us this morning. And thank you for opening our eyes to the fact that our children essentially have an invisible parent. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll